So from the very beginning, several members of the organization, notably Steve Schmidt and Rick Wilson, were and not George Conway and John Weaver, were determined to make this into a fundraising project to make millions of dollars of their own net worth added to this. And remember, George Conway, although he's a founding member of the Lincoln Project, was a wealthy lawyer. He really didn't need any outside money. Steve Schmidt was a political consultant who was asking Trump for a job allegedly back in 2016. You have Rick Wilson as a political consultant, John Weaver as a political consultant. All their money comes from consulting.
Right.
So they were all receiving hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they believed that this would be a way to make money. In the end, this blew up to make over $87 million, and they were trying to transform it then from a political consulting company to a media company to make billions of dollars over the course of the next 5 years. They had a big grand illusion of this. They just didn't. They thought that they could suppress the John Weaver story. John Weaver, one of their founding members, was soliciting sex from young men over the course of the last 20 years. At minimum,
let me jump in just for a moment, because so they've raised to date. You said 80, so right around 90 million. I think about 50 million of that has been spent. Where'd the other 40 million go?
Well, that's the thing, is that a lot of it went to consultant fees. Over 50% went to consultant fees for their companies owned by Lincoln Project co-founders companies. So
is that a fancy way of saying into the pockets of the four founders?
Well, we don't know, because once it gets into the companies, we don't know where it goes. Steve Schmidt got $1.5 million for a consulting fee. We do know that. A lot of it went to media consulting or ad buying, but ad buying in the political consulting world gets also funneled back to the consultants.
Right.
So where it dispersed after that, we're really not sure. Either way, it's very obvious that Steve Schmidt bought a very expensive house in Utah right after this. Rick Wilson paid off his home. John Weaver paid back taxes that he owed, hundreds of thousands of dollars of taxes. They made money that they didn't have afforded to them before the Lincoln Project.
And John Weaver, I mean, this guy, this should be one of the biggest stories in America. This guy, you touched on this, so he's one of the founders. He was married, by the way, with kids. He's since gotten a divorce. 21 people have come forward. A lot of these now men were boys, young kids. One was 14 years old, and he'd promised to help them with their careers and groom them. He'd invite them for internships. Apparently, though, what's really scary is that this was all an open secret that the other three founders were willing to overlook because they were making so much darn money.
So when this story came to me, it was in July. It was when I started working on it. And I was working on it with another reporter from the New York Post at the time. And they had heard that I was working on the story. They knew about it allegedly, according to this article, back in January, which I am shocked in. I didn't even hear. I was hearing it as early as March. They knew as early as January, some members. And they said by August, it was an open secret within the organization. And you said 21 young men. 21 young men came forward on one article. There's now been 6 or 7 articles. It's probably over 150 young men.
My goodness.
And 2 are minors. Most are under the age of 25. And he was doing it over and over and over again, basically not only offering them jobs for sex and being very creepy online, but then asking some for meetings in hotel rooms where he would meet them and basically demand sex at that point, in exchange for work.
Oral sex and things like that. These reports are very detailed. Do you think that there will be charges or something will happen with the other members if it is proved, the other founders, I should say, that they overlooked this? And they overlooked this because the goal was always to get the evil orange man out of the Oval Office. And they were these guys who were conservatives. I mean, these guys who were, they worked with John McCain. They were Republicans. They were darlings of the left, though. I mean, I would see Rachel Maddow would have them on all the time. They'd be on CNN all the time. And now they're persona non grata. But you still don't hear the left reporting on this corruption.
It's true. It's true. When I broke the story on January the 11th for American Conservative Magazine, they went on MSNBC and CNN almost 20 times, and they were never asked about my allegations. Wow. It wasn't until the New York Times story came out that the first person, which was Mika Brzezinski, even asked one other of the founding members this question. So they were allowed to skirt away with it for a very, very long time without it. And they were, as you said, they were only given credentials by the left because the media talked with them nonstop. They always promoted from publications, television hosts. They promoted the Lincoln Project nonstop, and they promoted an organization that hid a pedophile and a sexual predator.
Yeah, for a long time, and Hollywood loved them. Jennifer Aniston, Felicity Huffman, how ironic is that? Jason Bateman, they all donated money to the Lincoln Project. Quick question, I want to ask you what you think happens next, but Steve Schmidt, I saw some virtue signaling in his resignation letter. He asked that a woman be appointed to take over for him. So a little virtue signaling on the way out the door for Steve Schmidt.
Yeah, Steve Schmidt's resignation letter sat there and talked about when he was molested when he was 12 and how John Weaver made him feel like he was 12 again, and how it's all really about John Weaver attacking him because how he feels. It had virtual signaling, it had child molestation, it had the Catholic Church. I mean, it had everything for everybody. It was the biggest show. And then at the end, he plugged his next hit on Bill Maher. It was a joke.
Totally.
And as far as he needed to resign to leave a space open for women, people are leaving the Lincoln Project left and right. There's plenty of spaces left for people. I mean, their only co-founding woman who was a member left like the previous week, Jennifer Horn, who then they publicly bashed and then leaked her private